It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy Wednesday.
All right, so there's two things on the war front. And the first story is, I thought this would get, I guess there's just domestically, there's so much that people are talking about right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you think about it, this is actually huge. Iraqi authorities on Tuesday confirmed the arrest of an ISIS member accused of inciting the New Year's terrorist attack on Bourbon Street in New Orleans that left 15 people dead, including the perpetrator. The arrest comes months after 42-year-old Samsuddin Jabbar of Texas killed 14 civilians and injured 57 when he rammed a Ford F-150 through crowds of people celebrating New Year's on the famous New Orleans street around 3 a.m. January 1st. He was killed in a shootout with police. Iraqi authorities said their investigation into the ISIS member came at the request of American authorities, but did not expand on exactly what incited the deadly attack. Officials are not releasing the suspect's name. The suspect will be tried in Iraq under the country's anti-terror laws for being a member of ISIS, according to a translated statement from the Iraqi judiciary. With the efforts of the National Center of International Justice Cooperation, a person involved in the terrorist ISIS organization was arrested for inciting the hit-and-run incident that occurred in the United States in January of 2025, which led to the death of 15 people and the injury of 30 others, said Iraq, according to the translated version of the statement, adding that the center received a request from the United States of America to assist in investigations related to the terrorist operation that took place in the city of New Orleans, in which gunmen ran over a crowd of celebrants with a truck before opening fire on them. You know, you think about it, and they go through the investigative court and everything that, you know, the Iraqi courts have said.
Yeah.
That in itself, you know, people wonder, okay, you know, what's the situation in Iraq right now? That seems like a tremendous amount of cooperation.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
From Iraq.
Right.
And you don't hear the United States demanding that he come back here for trial, because I don't know what inciting means. I mean, I know what the word means.
Right,
I
but
don't
legally, what does it rise to?
In this context, I don't know what inciting, you know, does that mean, to me, inciting would be part of the conspiracy.
Yeah.
You know, because what's inciting? Did you cheer it? Or I don't know what that means.
Right.
If you, does inciting mean that you conspired, that you were involved in the operation at all? And if this person was, and we find out the United States said he was, and we might know already, Iraq might have already communicated with the United States what the situation is. Does Trump target ISIS?
I do wonder overall. I have been wondering about the terrorism front, about the enemy. Obviously, the headlines and conversation have centered around the Houthis and Hamas. This is Hezbollah. This is something that I believe is a very critical situation since the botched exit of Afghanistan, which created a terrorism superstate in Afghanistan. And we have evidence of that. We know that. It's not just the Taliban. You have remnants of Al-Qaeda, ISIS. They're all there. Keep in mind, too, ISIS in eastern Afghanistan, in Trump's first term, one of the first missions, as he took out a cell of ISIS in the mountains of Afghanistan with the Moab. And again, I believe this administration is certainly aware of what's going on, but you don't hear a lot of conversation about that. This is one of the first stories, about any member of ISIS that really related to what's going on here in the States, what the threat might be. But there's, for me, been a great concern with the botched exit of Afghanistan because of how horrendous it was, the loss of life, but then also what we lost from having a leverage with intel in Afghanistan. That gave us a great deal of leverage of being able to monitor all of the enemies. And now I wonder, how much do we rely on a country like Iraq? How much would we get? We know things like Israel's intel is superior, right? Mm-hmm. So things we learn about Iran, things we learn about the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, much of that comes from the Israeli intel. Well, but there are other nations that have to monitor it for their own existence and safety. And also there's the cooperation, because you want the backing, you want the support, you want the U.S. to be an ally. So it is an interesting question. I have a lot of questions about it, again, what's on the radar, what isn't. I have confidence in our intel officers, rank and file, who are doing the job. I have greater confidence now than when Biden was in office. But those rank and file officers in the field that are doing this know a great deal. The concern has always been about the intel that comes back to D.C. and what's done with it then. You've got to make it pretty. You've got to tame it down. Remember, during the Obama years, it was said that some of the intel was changed before it was given to him. But policymakers as well. That's been a kind of a problem, a quagmire for the longest time between intel and policymakers, intel and administrations, and because administrations and policymakers, any political figure wants to look good for their constituents. And it's not always pretty. The intel you get doesn't always come back, looking great. It's, in fact, most often scary. It's the whole point of finding the dangers in the world. And ISIS is, we have to go back to al-Baghdadi. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was kind of the guy who really was the one who championed the lone wolf approach. Use whatever means necessary, even if you're just one person. So ISIS really moved away from, even though they do have cells, but they didn't necessarily, under especially al-Baghdadi, they didn't believe they needed to have cells. You don't need other people in order to plan whatever you're going to do to hurt what they consider to be the enemy, and that's us. And so we see that over and over again. When you see in a free society that people are going to move about freely where crowds are, it's always been, and certainly since 9/11 has been, a great concern of how you keep people safe when normal-looking people, they're not going to drive up and make it obvious that they're members of ISIS or working on behalf of the enemy. The entire point is to be able to do as much damage as possible and to terrorize the community beyond that.
When I look at that this ISIS member has been charged with inciting, the White House may know exactly what that is. what incitement means, legally, or what they mean when they say that in Iraq, because it would be if the orders came from ISIS in Iraq and there was a conspiracy, even if the conspiracy was communications as to what to do and not necessarily, for example, you're not talking military support because you're not talking about a lot of guns, you're talking about a truck and whatever weapons he used, on that day. But if the instructions came from that point, then that, again, will make the United States much more wary of the fact that we are vulnerable to terrorism, which, again, when you look at the border, which is a secure border, which is why we want a secure border, to make it harder.
Yeah.
If somebody is intent on attacking you, they're going to be able to attack you in some way, but you make it as hard as possible to do so.
Right.
The other point would be is you don't hear much about the relationship between Iraq and the United States right now.
Yeah, right.
You don't
Great
hear the
point.
screaming. I mean, we have 2,500 troops still there right now. They're supposed to draw it down, and most of them are supposed to move into the Kurdish parts out of Baghdad, but we're still in Baghdad right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't hear, I think we had talked about this way back then, that one of the best representatives, probably the best representatives of the United States, when you look at the history of the last 100 years, you look, post-World War I, but especially post-World War II, is the American service person.
Yeah, right.
And we always said the same thing, with Iraq. But Iraq, again, they still have the challenges from Syria. They still have the challenges from Iran. They still have ISIS concerns. But it seems like over the period where there was a lot more anger you would see in the government of Iraq, that doesn't at least appear to be the case or being promoted as the case to the U.S. media.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see if there's any analysis that is done, on, where Iraq is right now. But it seems that in this case, and I won't say whether I tend to believe it, but the question would be, is this very, very proactive what Iraq did? Because there seems to be a lot of being proactive and being totally what would be the word I would use? They're proactive. They're communicating.
Yeah.
There seems to be an interest to, in essence, build an alliance here. You're fighting them. You're here. A cooperation, I guess would be the word. Seems to be a great deal of cooperation here. And if that's the case, that's a good thing with Iraq.
Well, and I have to wonder, and it would make sense that the Trump administration in this situation, if you look at what Trump has believed for the longest time, he wants other nations to stand on their own, whether they're, all of our allies, and I guess you could put Iraq in there, but he wants these nations to stand on their own and be proactive, right? I mean, he wants them to really handle their things, and also anything that would relate to the U.S. And I wonder if there were conversations since January 20th about, all of this and what intel Iraq might have and how this might help Iraq to be more proactive, with the international community. There isn't, as you mentioned, a lot of talk or focus on Iraq lately, but that would be right out of the Trump ideology, the Trump beliefs that he's had for decades on national defense and other nations in general. And so it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if it's happened. I have no indication, but it wouldn't surprise me if Trump officials were talking to them and said, hey, look, you need to be proactive and vocal about this, and we can't handle what's going on there. If there's something that's going on that's related to something that happened here, you have to handle that, and you should be very vocal. And
what I also wonder is, remember Trump wanting to withdraw troops from Syria briefly, as he did in 2019.
Yeah.
And, one of the fears is if the troops are pulled out of out of Syria, that ISIS could take a bigger stronghold in Syria that Iraq does not want.
Right.
And I'm wondering, because of the image and reality of Trump when it comes to what he expects from other countries, that Iraq wants to be proactive, wants to help the United States in order, because NBC reporting again, Trump hasn't made any decision, but the plans are drawn up to pull those troops out of Syria again. And this is a way to curry favor with Trump by saying, look, we found this. We're helping you. We will try this person. We're attempting to control ISIS. We're doing our part. And there's this great cooperation. And it makes Trump say, okay, let's keep those troops in Syria.
Right. Right.
Again, it's a guess, but that's basically looking at what has happened, over the period of when Trump was president last time and what was done and what Iraq's goal might be at this point to curry favor with the president.
Sure.
Which, by the way, would be a good thing. I'm not denouncing it as a bad thing.
Well, it's how foreign relations work,
right.
Especially on things like this. But it is directly related to something that happened here on American soil.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by Howes Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey calls this week's U.S. weather map interesting. Why?
We have a cold front that is easing its way across the plains, the Midwest, and eventually heading for the Mid-South and the eastern United States.
At the same time,
we have a disturbance arriving in the northwestern United States,
with those two systems eventually merging in the south later this week, increasing active weather.
It looks like Oklahoma and Texas may be the focal point for some of the heaviest rain around midweek. We could see anywhere from 1 to 4 inches, possibly higher totals in thunderstorms. Similar totals can be expected as you move northeastward from there later this week, again extending into the mid-south, the lower Midwest, and eventually parts of the Northeast, all expecting at least 1 to 2 inches with locally higher totals.
Areas that may miss the precipitation this week include some states in the southern Atlantic region. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I really can't wait to see some analysis that I can trust on as to what's going on in Iraq in this entire thing, and how this whole thing and whoever this ISIS member is in Iraq that's going to be tried there, who Iraq claims incited the January 1st attack in New Orleans. What exactly that means, and there'll be some pretty good analysis that I think we'll be able to trust on it, just to understand what the situation is, because it does seem, like I said again, very proactive and a heck of a lot of cooperation from Iraq to help the United States, figure out exactly what happened, and whether there a conspiracy, incitement, whatever it is. Did I say excitement? I meant incitement, not excitement.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, now we've got another thing. India's prime minister giving the armed forces near complete freedom of action to respond following a deadly attack on tourists on April 22nd that saw 26 people killed by terrorists. India and Pakistan have exchanged fire every day since the attack.
Wow.
That's been that's been underreported.
Yeah, it really has.
We'll get to that coming up.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
Trinidad Radio, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Expect more news on this. I think more coverage of a possible, hopefully not, war between India and Pakistan. The Prime Minister of India giving the armed forces near complete freedom of action to respond following a deadly attack on tourists in a disputed region on April 22nd. 26 people killed by terrorists. India and Pakistan have exchanged fire every day since the attack along the line of control that separates the Indian and Pakistani areas of Kashmir. The Times of India reported on Tuesday that the Prime Minister has given the military the operational freedom to decide on the mode, targets, and timing of the response to the attack in Kashmir. The Prime Minister is set to convene, that's of India, another meeting with the Cabinet Committee today to coordinate India's next move. The move comes as Pakistan's Minister for Information and Broadcasting claimed on X that his country has credible intelligence that India intends carrying out military action against Pakistan in the next 24 to 36 hours on the pretext of baseless and concocted allegations of involvement in the terrorist incident. So,
yeah. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio urging calm and is going to speak to his counterparts in India and Pakistan. In fact, not sure if that conversation has already taken place or it may happen later today. Those conversations. China's also urging restraint. When you think of a war between India and Pakistan, it's not one, again, that I guess would be in the radar of most people outside of that region, that part of the world. But if it escalates into, a full-blown situation.
well, you always worry about nukes when you're talking India and Pakistan.
Yep.
That's the thing in the back of everybody's mind.
Yeah.
At that point. But,
Right. Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that's about the only thing I can say is I guess we'll see. I'm sitting there trying to find. Did I save it here? I want to play one thing here because this is something that we had talked about yesterday, and it mirrors most of what we have said. And I wanted to play it. Now I'm having problems with my computer. Is your computer up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And problems getting what I want on the computer. But this is Mark Halperin, and this is really the thing that's blown up this week. And it came from the White House Correspondents' Dinner when the Axios reporter, said we missed things, the cover-up of Biden, and we were like, you didn't miss anything. You decided not to report it.
Yeah.
And Mark Halperin, who again, Democrat, here's what he had to say. A Democrat that seems to be doing a lot more fair coverage of the Biden administration and liberals in general. But here he is on this from yesterday.
The biggest story that the Democrats have not been honest about is Joe Biden's mental decline. And we saw that on vivid display at the White House Correspondents' Dinner this weekend. A guy named Alex Thompson won an award as one of the few reporters who wrote anything about Biden's mental acuity decline. Even he acknowledged in his remarks that he fell short and said the media fell short.
President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story. And some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows.
The problem with that is he's not being honest about what actually happened. It wasn't that the press kind of fell down on the job and wasn't aggressive enough. They actively participated with the Biden administration in covering up Biden's mental acuity decline, which was plain for all to see. They pretended it wasn't happening. In some cases, they allowed themselves to be intimidated by the Biden team into not writing about it. And this was no small thing. This was no small thing. It was an effort to help Joe Biden win, to keep Donald Trump from going back to the White House. And it not just put their finger and thumb and forearm and kneecap on the scale, but it destroyed the credibility with the press, with lots of people. And I heard from people all throughout the election season who said, I voted Democrat in the past, but I'm voting for Donald Trump because the press bias on the mental acuity thing was so pronounced. That lie by the press about not only Joe Biden's mental acuity decline and not just about the cover-up for the Biden people, but the lie about the press's own participation is one of the biggest media stories in the country's history.
And it is.
Yeah.
And that comes from Mark Halperin. And to hear after what we said yesterday, I'm like, whoa. Did he can we get him on plagiarism? No. No, I'm kidding. But that's the thing too, when you had the reporter from Axios, saying we need to be truthful. Well, you're lying. You're not being truthful. And I'm glad Mark Halperin called him out on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That when you're saying, and we need to be truthful and honest with ourselves, no, we have to pretend that we just missed it.
Well, when they say things like, we have to do better, I took that as, we have to do better at cover-ups.
Yeah. It's amazing. They keep, by doing it, Eric, they just keep digging a bigger hole where it's like, sorry, we know what you guys did.
Yeah.
Stop trying to give I don't know how to say this, but a line mea culpa.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna say
no,
we're
they're
sorry
trying to have
as
it
we
both
lie.
ways. Yeah. We're gonna lie about it and sorry, our bad.
We'll try to do better next time.
Yeah,
no,
we're gonna do better.
The media did exactly what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
They are not journalists. They're political activists. The reason that you didn't get a large cheer, you remember it was just a smattering of applause, like,
Yeah.
It's like, because they had to do something, but they don't wish to be forgiven. There's nothing to be forgiven for. There's nothing for them to say they're sorry for, because they did it and they would do it again. You see it with the way that the coverage of Trump already. They haven't sat there and reevaluated and said, maybe we should become journalists. Maybe we should just report the truth.
The truth, yeah.
The Maryland saint, the Maryland saintly father.
Right. Who the left is going to nominate for the next pope, by the way.
Who's in line to be the next pope and will spend no time in purgatory and go directly to heaven because he has lived that kind of Mother Teresa life.
That's right.
All right, maybe we're exaggerating a little bit there. You understand our point,
Saint
though.
Garcia. Yeah, it's the problem is that, it's going to continue in the future. They did the same thing for Kamala. She can form a complete sentence. There's nothing odd about the way she talks. And what's the difference? With Biden, he's no longer useful to them. Keep in mind, in 2020, he was just a means to get power. It wasn't, he was useful to them then. Now, clearly, no longer useful. Well, anybody who might be useful, you're still going to defend. Kamala Harris wants to build a wall. David Hogue. It's,
somebody should ask. Oh my God!
Yeah.
Great.
Oh yeah. We got a lot of questions.
One of the conservative reporters are. You got to ask. You got to go to David Hogue. What did you think about Kamala Harris wanting to build a wall and saying that she would be tougher on illegal immigration than Trump? Do you think after what you've seen Trump do that she would have been tougher? Somebody needs to ask Kamala there.
Well, her running mate, remember, recently tried to pretend like that never happened. When he was saying, we need to get out there and be basically more radical. You were part.
Yeah.
You joined her campaign after that happened.
After the ad was running.
That's right. And you didn't have to.
There are some nights that you just don't forget, even though you do thousands and thousands of shows. And when I was sitting here and you were sitting here and was off the air first, and we're playing that ad from Kamala that Trump doesn't care about the border. Kamala Harris will close the border.
Right.
She'll build the wall.
Right.
And we're like, what? Did somebody spike our drinks?
Well, exactly.
This can't be true.
Right. And can I get another one? But here's the problem, bartender, is that, again, they're going to do it over and over again. Whoever is useful to them today. Schumer is clearly no longer useful. When you start hearing more and more of that, it's like, okay, all right, get out. And that's actually how it happened with Biden. I mean, that implosion of a debate performance, next thing you know, Godmother Nancy's on the phone going, all right, look, all the families talked. It's over. You got to get out. You got to get out.
Wait a minute. Schumer calling Trump a mob boss.
And
if you wanted any type of mob activity, it was Biden being booted out and Kamala being appointed in.
Well, and Schumer was one of those. Remember what Schumer said about you don't want to go after the intel community, warning Trump.
Oh yeah.
And had that weird Joker-looking smile that he has on his face.
Maybe that's why Pritzker had to come out with his statement. He's like, I've got to be I've got to be the most violent out here.
Wait a minute.
I've got to be the biggest mob boss.
Yeah. I just put it together. If we're doing a villain movie, Pritzker is clearly the Penguin. I would have given that to Nadler, but no. It's Pritzker.
Is AOC Catwoman?
She is. And Schumer's the Joker. Look at his smile. Come on. Put the makeup on it. He's the Joker. How was he not?
I did in my mind.
How was he not the Joker?
That smile that he has and put the makeup on.
Yep. And Cory Booker is the Riddler. It's true. Come on. It's true.
And Trump is Batman. And
Trump is definitely Batman.
And J.D. Vance is Robin.
It's not a strong role, but somebody has to do it. And,
oh, my God.
Yeah, and Marco Rubio is Commissioner Gordon. We got it all down. It's over. It's done. It's written. Pritzker is the Penguin. I don't know.
I like Pritzker, but that was the best. That got it going. That was the best.
There's no doubt that role is solid. He is the Penguin.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just want to make one note. We played the other day that reporter asking a question, saying if the United States would give British people who have been jailed for memes, if not using the proper pronouns, would give them sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they could come to the United States.
Right.
That was Winston Marshall from Mumford and Sons.
Oh, wow.
That was him doing it. I saw it the other day.
Okay.
I saw it 2 days ago, and a listener wrote to me yesterday and said, that was Winston Marshall. I found that out. I said,
didn't know that.
I didn't know that. They didn't identify him in the audio cut that I was looking at. He was identified as a British reporter. But remember, did he leave or was he kicked out?
There's a debate about that.
And that was
interesting.
That was that was
Very.
great. And that was he asked the White House if British punished over free speech could seek asylum in the United States. Did you see the smile on her face?
Yeah.
She's like,
right.
She wasn't expecting that.
And it was a good question.
It was a great question.
Yeah. Right.
But it doesn't just apply to them.
Right.
It can apply to other Western
bet.
democracies that are jailing people for what we consider free speech here.
Yep.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.